Thank you very much. Hi, everybody. My name's Sandy Beach, and I'm an alcoholic. Can you hear me all right in the back? Okay, thanks. I get a big kick out of coming to this group. You need to take some tranquilizers before you come here. But other than that, it's a hell of an experience. But enthusiasm is such a powerful word, and there's certainly that captures the spirit of this group. It's really wonderful. I was thinking that next year we're going to have the International Convention celebrating AA's 80th year. And I'm old enough so that when I was born there was no AA. And alcoholics didn't really have a chance. They really didn't. Throughout history, they would end up in mental institutions or committing suicide, jails or whatever, but there wasn't any hope for them. There really wasn't. And along came Bill Wilson, who in a hospital had a very powerful spiritual experience. And from that came this whole thing. It's like that moment was the big bang of Alcoholics Anonymous. And it's interesting to think about that, because you can either say that explosion occurred 80 years ago, or you could say it's still happening. And I like to think that it's still happening. We're still experiencing the energy of that night. And this is passed on from one alcoholic to another. And it's designed so that each alcoholic has a chance to have that same experience. That transforming experience where you suddenly realize that your perspective and perception of everything was way off. Way off. And that this world is just marvelous compared to what we thought. But in order to see it, you have to have the transformation. Or as Chuck Chamberlain said, the new pair of glasses. Where somebody hands you these glasses, and when you look through them, you see another dimension to your own life and to the world and everything. Kind of like those three-dimension glasses. Remember the movies they had? And you'd end up ducking because the ball was coming at you and all that. And so I feel very fortunate to encompass all of AA's history in my own life. I got sober in December of 1964. And that's also Pearl Harbor Day. And my sponsor got sober on August 6th, which is Hiroshima Day. And he told me that our lives had something to do with getting bombed. And so in any event, I thought it was a great time to live when I was born, because the country was coming out of a depression, and who knows how long it would have taken if the Japanese didn't attack us. But once they did, we were in the war of all wars, and the country knew that they had to unite, or there was a good chance we wouldn't win this war. And so everybody was on the same team. It was just great. Everybody was eager to sacrifice for a common cause. And I remember my mother was an air spotter up in Connecticut. And she had times that she went up on the tallest hill in the town and radioed in any airplane that flew over. And the submarines were, of course, on the East Coast. The Germans had their submarines out there for a lot of the war, especially in the beginning. So a lot of ships were sunk because we just didn't take it seriously yet. And they left the lights on in New York City. And the ships were silhouetted against that. And the submarine just sat there going, wow, this is the easiest target I've ever seen. And so we finally took it even more seriously and got blackouts and all of that. So I was 10 or 11 when this started. And all my relatives went in the military, just about everybody. And if you didn't do that, you went into a defense plant. And everywhere you can imagine, there were factories building airplanes and tanks and guns and all that stuff. And I saw a picture of Firestone out in Akron with his son. And they were building the 20 millimeter cannons that you put on ships to shoot down airplanes. And we think of him as producing rubber tires, but during the war they really had a great deal more that we were involved in. And my uncle was a pilot in the Air Force. And I remember when he came home, he was a bomber pilot in Europe, and those guys didn't have long life expectancies. But I remember when he came home and he had his uniform on, he had those wings, and it was so exciting. And I said, I wonder if someday I'll grow up and be a pilot like him. Well, I did, but when I got the wings and finally got promoted to captain, which is where he was, I looked in the mirror and I said, they sure don't make captains like they used to. Because my opinion of myself was so low that I couldn't take credit for anything. I just, like alcoholics with low self-esteem. And so anyway, I grew up in New Haven, Connecticut, and we had a lot of defense plants. Winchester Rifle was there. And when the war ended, we came into the 50s. It was just amazing because the plants all started making automobiles. They didn't make many automobiles in the 40s. I think they stopped in 46. So there's no such thing as a 48 Ford. If somebody wants to sell you one, tell them they didn't make them that year. And so there was a GI Bill. There was the cars of the 50s. I think they're the coolest looking cars that have ever been built. So there was this great excitement in the country, and it was a great time to live. Unfortunately, I was an alcoholic, and I wasn't going to enjoy any of this. Just like you didn't enjoy whatever era you grew up in. My greatest fear was other people. And they were all over the place, so I was always running into them. You couldn't avoid them. They were just, And somehow I knew that I was inferior to all these people. And it was my job to not let them find out. So you got to run around trying to act like you're not inferior. That's a tough job. It's a very tough job. And I suffered from it until I got to college. And in college, everybody was drinking. I was going to hold off drinking because I grew up in the Catholic Church. And there was, if I remember, if you held off drinking until you were 21, you got something like 200,000 years off in purgatory. And as I kept track of my own sins, I had already exceeded that. I mean, as soon as my brain started working, it worked on sin. Just, let's think of something sinful. And so I said, well, no, we're not going to drink till we're 21. But I'm at the university, and my roommates and everybody, they're going, what are you doing? You're in college, and you're not drinking. This is when you drink, when you're in college. And I said, well, I'll get around to it, but not yet. I'm not going to do it yet. And there came a night when the dean of the freshmen had typed up a list of 30 people. My name was on the list. And I was to go in this room on the old campus and meet these other 20 guys. Meet and greet. Get to know everyone. Go up and say hello to everyone. I'd rather go in combat than to do that. But I couldn't get out of it, so I went. And on the way in, I decided, let's be brave tonight. Let's just walk up and say hello to people. You can do it. Can you imagine cheering yourself on to say hello? It's ridiculous. But I got there and I looked around trying to figure out where I was going to start, because they had already divided up into about 5 groups. And I said, that one looks friendly over there. So I started over, and they all turned and looked at me, and with their eyes they said, we don't want to know you. And I said, oh, I'm sorry, I don't mean to upset you. I'm actually going to this group over here. And as I glanced at them, they had the same look in their eye. You know how you can talk with your eyes? And they said, this group is already big enough. We don't need anybody else in this group. And I went around and looked at every group and gave up. I said, well, that's that. So I went back to the door that I came in, and there was a bartender, and he had a little bar set up with whiskey and stuff. So I said, tonight's the night. What the hell? I might as well have a drink here. So I went over and ordered scotch and soda. I had heard somebody else order one. And I drank it down, and I sat there waiting to feel good. And nothing happened. I just poured it down. I'm waiting. So I got another one. And I'm waiting to feel good. And I didn't. I said, well, let's take quite a bit of this stuff. So I got a third one. And I got about half of it down. And I said, this stuff is vastly overrated. I don't feel a damn thing. And I was getting ready to leave. And I looked again at the room. Everyone in the room wanted to know me. I couldn't believe it. All the groups were going, please join our group. Please join our group. Please. We'd give anything to know you. And I'm going, really? So alcohol didn't really change me, but it sure changed the world that I lived in. was it was just amazing. So I started over to the first group, and on the way over, I had the feeling that they really would be lucky to know me. So you can see my perception of the world, of me, of everything, changed like that. Well, I went around and met everyone. Just went and met everyone. I had something to say about everything, whatever state they were from. And then they started going home, and I'm going, wait, we're just getting started here, guys. What do you... And they said, no, we got to study. What do you want to study for? Stay here. This is... And they all went home. So I went back up to the bartender, and I was thinking to myself, boy, if 3 drinks did that, what would 20 drinks do? Just out of... So I had that a great experience of drinking way more than I could handle and going back. And I spent most of the night in the bathroom, lying on the floor next to the toilet. And I was to know that well as the years went on. A lot of us spend a lot of time in there. And when I got up the next morning, I was sitting on the edge of the bed, and I thought I was going to die. I felt like I had a hatchet in my head. And it was just splitting. And the thought occurred to me. I said, well, you're going to drink again tonight? And it was a millisecond. And I said, of course I am. I said, this hatchet in my head and this puking and dying is a small price to pay for what happened to me last night. That's why I'm an alcoholic. Alcohol did things for me, not to me, for me, that it doesn't do for non-alcoholics. It solved all my problems. It gave me answers. I could trust it. It was the most amazing friend that I could ever have. And so I just threw my hat into the drinking crowd and almost didn't graduate. That's how important drinking became. I got into fraternities. I got into anything that had to do with drinking. And my grades started suffering immediately. I was doing pretty good, actually. But when you're going to choose drinking over studying on a consistent basis, you're not going to get very high grades. And so I found myself switching courses to ones that I had a better shot of passing that weren't going to help me in my life at all. And I don't know if you all did that, but I ended up taking a bunch of junk. And one of them was languages. For some unknown reason, even drunk, I could learn a new language. So I studied a lot of Spanish. Now, all these years later, I know Los Angeles. That's the end of my... That's my big Spanish deal. But I will tell you one thing about I had a full professor from Cuba. His name was Jose Arom. And the Castro thing was starting up. And I'll never forget this guy. He came up to us and he said, listen, I grew up in Cuba. I know the country as well as anybody in the world. And I can personally guarantee you that it'll never go communist. And I often wish I could run into him so that I could go, well, I think you missed that one by a little bit. Halfway through my college years, the Korean War broke out. And they had a draft for that really was quite inclusive. And so a couple of friends of mine, we were sitting around drinking beer in our senior year, and one of them said, why don't we go down and join the Marine Corps? Because then we get to choose which branch we're going to go in. And I thought that was the greatest idea. I said, yeah, geez, that's wonderful. So 4 of us went down to the recruiting office, and they were so delighted to see us. Half drunk, willing to sign anything. Oh, that's fine with me. Whatever you want, I'll do that. And so I graduated and sat around waiting for orders, and they came probably in October of that year. And I found myself on the train going down to join the Marine Corps. And I looked at the brochures from the various Marine bases, and they all had golf courses. And I kind of pictured myself playing golf, really enjoying being in the Marine Corps. And we got to Washington, D.C. That's funny, this story, I forgot about it. But that summer, the Marine Corps down at Paris Island had beat a guy up and he died. You know, the drill sergeants were being a little enthusiastic. And it really upset Congress. They didn't want that happening. So they called the commandant in and they chewed him out. Said, we don't want any more of that happening. There won't be any beating up. You will not put your hands on the recruits. And I don't think I had read it that much, but one of the guys that was going down on the train with us was this little guy, and he was well versed on everything. So he started coaching us. He said, we don't have to take any of this stuff from these guys. I said, they can't touch us. That's the new thing. And when we get there, I'm going to explain it to them. I'm going to go up and tell them about it. So I was going, I like this guy. You know what I mean? So he got out of there and he came we got up on the train deck, the train station platform, and there was a E7, a black gunnery sergeant, black guy with one of the Smokey the Bear hats, and he started yelling at everybody. Oh, you guys come over there. And this guy walked up to him, and he started pointing at him. I know my rights. I know what the new thing is. You can't go. You got to front. And this guy decked him. He just hit him. And they came down and carried him off on the stretcher, and we never saw him again. Boy, were we were in a new position. And I'll be damned. I mean, it was, the stuff you go through it's amazing. But it does strip you of your own personality and transform you into a Marine, so that's where your loyalty lies and where you got a cause that's bigger than you. Kind of reminds me of AA. We got something here that's bigger than us individually, and we're all willing to compromise. Well, I want it done this way, but if the majority votes that way, I'm going to go along, which is very important in this program. But anyway, after about 5 weeks, I was standing in line next to one of the Quonset huts where they had the office in there. And here's this Sergeant E5 typing. It was the guy from the railroad train. He had dressed up in civilian clothes and gone up to the Washington, D.C. and got on the train with us. And the whole thing was a show. Do you follow what I'm saying? They really didn't hit him. But it worked like a charm. So Now, when you're going through something like that, you don't drink very much because they don't let you out. And besides, if you did drink, they were going to really cause you a lot of trouble. So for that amount of time, I got in great shape, and I hadn't had a drink in 10 weeks. And we were sent out for 6 months of training to become an infantry officer. And during that time, the drinking was allowed. And I almost didn't make it through that damn school because drinking came back. But I did make it through. And at the end, there was a movie about pilots. I'd never been in a plane. And I saw this movie. And I suddenly said, those guys don't sleep in foxholes. I can see that. They've got a much better deal. So I signed up for flight school, and this major came up and said, you don't want to do that. You got to serve 2 more years. I said, no, that looks very good. And I passed all the physicals, and I got orders to Pensacola. And I always said, when I grew up in Connecticut, and I saw pictures of palm trees, and I tell you, I knew I wanted to live where the palm trees were. And I was right. I really loved being in this type of climate. And I met this wonderful woman. We got married. We honeymooned in New York, and then we flew down to Pensacola. And I got airsick on the plane going to Atlanta. It was the old propeller planes. And I got airsick in Pensacola for the first 5 flights in the old SNJ. But then that went away, the motion sickness, and I did very well. As I went through each phase, I would be number 2 or 3 in the class. And we went through gunnery and formation and night flying and go to board the carrier, all those things. And then we went down to Texas, and we got into jets. And that took about 3 more months, and then we got our wings, and the war was over. And I had orders to Japan for a frontline fighter squadron. And so when we got over there, it was, we did a lot of training, and we did a lot of that, but it was a lot of drinking. Everybody in the squadron seemed to me to be a heavy drinker. And the reason I say that is, at happy hour, the colonel would order the drinks. He'd call the waiter over and go, let's have another round. Now, you know when you're in that situation and you're an alcoholic, they don't drink anywhere near as fast as you. So you have to excuse yourself and go to the bathroom and then stop by the bartender. Could I have a double scotch and you drink it down. Then you come back and go, who's ready for another round? I am. These guys drank fast enough that I didn't have to do that. Now that's a good crowd to be in. It was. And so I had a lot of great flying, a lot of getting in trouble, and all of that. But one day, the maintenance officer called me aside, and he said, I'm going to be a lieutenant colonel pretty soon, and I'd like to get a squadron of really good pilots. And I'd really like you to be in there, but I wouldn't let you drink. And I remember thinking to myself, what the hell is he talking about? I get drunk with him, I didn't ask him why. I didn't really want to know. And so it wasn't until I got to AA that I realized alcoholics frighten heavy drinkers. Our drinking has something with it that's more intense. It's just, it frightens them. And I didn't realize that. Well, we ended up having 6 children. I had wonderful assignments all over. But my drinking finally cost me my career. it came time to be promoted to major. And what happens when that happens is you're in the zone of eligibility. And I had joined AA. I had found AA. And my past caught up to me. My sponsor and I both were in this same zone. And the first year, neither one of us made it. Now you have 2 years. If you don't make it the second year, you quietly leave the Marine Corps. You just leave. And the second year, he made it, and I didn't. And I'm going to tell you, I was a big complainer at the AA meetings after that happened. I was so upset. I went to a meeting every night for 2 years, and I get thrown out of the Marine Corps. Now, is that what AA is all about? Is that what these steps are all about? I thought good things were supposed to happen. So I'm at the meetings, and they're going, has anybody got a topic? Yeah. Getting thrown out of the Marine Corps. And the leader said, Sandy, that's not a good topic. Everybody goes, yeah, it is. Okay. Getting thrown out of the Marine Corps. Now, this is what I expected to hear from my friends in AA. Oh, you're available for a job? I have a large corporation. I'd like a guy like you. How about $60,000 a year? You got your own car, and we'll take good care of you. No, I didn't hear any of that. Nobody said anything. One person said, double up on your meetings. You're going to have a lot of time on your hands. Another guy said, say the serenity prayer. It'll make you feel good. Another guy said, go help other people. Take your mind off yourself. And then the last guy said, the prayer of St. Francis. St. Francis was a Marine, and he gave up everything. So I got home and I went, I don't think I explained myself very good to the people for them to come up with stupid answers like that and just double up on meetings. Well, eventually I got a job and started succeeding. I was in real estate. And then everything went bad. Nobody had any money to loan. And I'm getting ready to declare bankruptcy after all these years. That upset me so much that I decided to bring it up at the meeting. So I'd like to bring up bankruptcy. They said, Sandy, that's just not a good... I don't care if it's not a good topic. I'm going to bring it up. I want to get some feedback. Like, how much money do you need? You know, that's what I thought I'd hear from somebody in the group. And they said, well, if you're going through bankruptcy, then you better double up on your meetings because you got a lot of time. And say the serenity prayer so that you can stay calm while you're going through bankruptcy. Go help another person. Take your mind off of yourself. And say the prayer of St. Francis because he took a vow of poverty. So I went, what the hell's wrong with AA? When you really need them, you get no help whatsoever. You get people saying this crap. And then came a divorce. And I bring it up again. I said, well, I want to... It was the same thing. Only St. Francis took a vow of chastity. So that was the only difference. So my point in telling that is to say, no matter what your problem is, the AA solution is the same. It's exactly the same. It is to surrender to a loving God who will carry you through whatever you face. And it sounds funny to say there's just one solution for all problems. But when you think about before we came to AA, what was your solution to every problem? Have a drink. Have a drink. And the same thing in the bar. If somebody came in with a problem, oh my God, I just found out I got cancer. Let me buy you a drink. Just found out my wife is leaving me. Let me buy you a drink. So there was one solution for all problems. And I remember one time getting a summons or warrant or some legal document in the mail. And I said, I don't know what I'm supposed to do with this. I've never had one of these before. So I have no idea what to do, but I will know shortly, because I went out to the kitchen and I took down the bottle and I took 3 or 4 drinks and waited. I said, it's very clear. Just tear it up and throw it away. So you can see the great decision-making power of alcohol. So if you're new, and I've tried to, I didn't get to talk about AA that much, but it really is the easier, softer way. AA is. It's going to enable us to establish personal contact with our own Creator. And the contact itself gives us great peace of mind. And when you already have peace of mind, there's nothing for alcohol to fix. So it's real easy to stay sober. If you're already happy, you're not sitting around about what do I need to do in order to get happy? And then you come up with a plan and nobody will let you do it because they are doing their plan and they're getting in your way. So not only do we get the guidance and the comfort from this power, but we get His help carrying it out. It's the most amazing thing. I tell people, if you have a serious problem, conduct this experiment. Go to the movies. Does that sound like a solution to serious problems? Well, that's my suggestion. You go to the movie, you pick one that you want to see, and you go and you look at the ticket and you see how many hours it runs. And you go out and you say, God, I'm going to be in the movie. Would you watch everything while I'm in there? Would you just take care of everything while I'm in there? And then really let Him hand it over. And see if you can just attend the movie and enjoy it. And just take it all in. Like a guy with no problems. I'm just sitting here. That was a hell of a movie. So then you come out and you say to God, okay, I'll take it back. And when you take it back, it's like it isn't as serious as it was when you turned it over. And you have some ideas as to what direction you ought to take that seem to come out of the blue. It's called intuition. And that's the level that we want to live at. That's the place we want to go, which is we don't directly come up with the plan for our life or the answer to problems. We totally rely on this new level of existence called the intuitive level. And It's the most amazing thing in the world. The problem is, and I'll close with this, my ego doesn't like that, even though it's a wonderful solution and it works all the time. Because I get no credit for this. Do you follow what I'm saying? I said, hey, God, would you figure this out? God figures it out. Would you give me the energy to do it? God gives me the energy. So I can't walk around saying, I accomplished something here. I have to give God all the credit all the time. And there's something about the human beings who don't like that. They want to be in charge of some part of their life and keep God out of it. And that's the hysterical part of our 12-step program, is that we have a perfectly wonderful solution, and we agree that it works, and we decide not to use it most of the time. God, I'll get back to you. I'm going to handle this one myself. And then you get a call. You have to call your sponsor. He said, what'd you do? You handle the problem yourself? Yeah. I decided to take it over. So if you're new and you can remember, let go and let God, you've captured the whole program. Thank you all very much.
My name's Sandy Beach, and I'm an alcoholic. Hi. Just for Chuck's benefit, I have to correct the anonymity break that I made in the program. And so we'll just call Sandy Beach the location of the meeting when this gets back to GSO, and I'll start over again and say, my name is Richard, and welcome to Sandy Beach. I came into AA on Pearl Harbor Day in 1964, and I haven't been drunk since my first meeting. And I've been to an awful lot of meetings since that first night, and I've done a lot of listening. And I'm convinced deep down in my heart that I owe it all to not drinking. That is my opinion of why I haven't been drunk since my first meeting is that. But that's really not a miracle because, you know, in jails and nut houses, those places, there wasn't any booze and I wasn't drunk either. So there took place the real miracle for me anyway. It was 3 or 4 months when one morning I got up and I was happy with not drinking. And that's contrary to the definition of an alcoholic. I mean, that's the third step. Because when I got to that step, I was suddenly confronted with God again. And I suddenly had a childhood fear explode inside of me. And I called my sponsor and I said, is this step referring to the God or... I mean, you know, the real God. I mean, the one there, and he came over, and I told him about the emergency that I had, and we had to do something about this. And he sat down and burst into hysterics, which he always does with my problems. I don't know what he does with his problems. My problems are always funny to him. He sat down and, oh, you got the God problem, huh? And I'm going, well, I got a God problem. You don't know the God? I go, there's 275,000 years minimum to do in purgatory. And you turn my life over to him. He's the one to get me for this. I was this big. I'm not turning my life over to him. We got a problem here. And he said, wait a minute. He says, you don't have to understand anything about God at all to turn your life over. He says, we're going to go, you're kind of a weird case. You have a lot of problems. We're going to have to do something a little bit different. So I'll tell you what we'll do. Why don't we have you turn your life over to whatever will take it? And then we'll have the miracle. And I like the miracle part. I heard about the miracles in AA. And I said, we will have the miracle? And he said, yes, I'll guarantee you a miracle if you will do that. So I said, okay, I'm going to go along. What's the miracle? He said, the miracle is that the management of your life will no longer be in the hands of an idiot. That is the miracle. stood back rather skeptically watching this whole procedure. Felt like I'd been had, turned my life over to the group, and I said, you guys want it? Go ahead, I'll do anything you suggest. You got it, I'll watch, but boy, you're going to hear from me, because, and I'm here tonight to report, geez, you're doing a nice job. I'm very satisfied with this, and it's from that I came to understand who God is. My own God, it came to me through the difference between turning my life over and not turning it over. God to me is the difference between living a life with and without God. I don't have to understand God. I just want a God who understands me. And that's what's happened. And I know that He understands me, accepts me for all my faults and all the problems that I have. He says, you're all right, you're doing fine, don't drink, go to meetings. We're hanging there, everything's all right. And I'm going, I'm glad to hear that. I'm like a little boy, he wanders off in his, and we want our mother we come running home, we've been scared by a dog, and my mother says, it's all right. And that's what happens to me in AA. I run out there and I have a big problem, like I'm running in, my spine says, it's all right. I go, are you sure? And he says, yeah, it's okay. Okay, that's good enough for me. If you say it's all right, it's all right. And all that's happening is that something's changing inside of me. And the second it changes, the world's all right. The world's all right. And if there's anybody new here, and I hope there are some new people, there's one last thing that I think you have to do in order to have the miracle of AA take place. All you have to do, if you're new, is don't drink, turn your life over to God, and get rid of all of your old ideas. That's all we ask. That's all we ask that you do. When I heard about turning over all my old ideas, I realize now that all of my old ideas was my whole game plan for living. My whole plan, everything, every conviction, every attitude, every prejudice, everything that I had about the world are my ideas, and it was like carrying around a 150-pound rock. But it was my rock. Was mine. I put this thing together. This was the real me, was this rock. And I came in here, and it was like I was in the ocean of alcoholism, and AA threw me a life preserver. And I'm hanging on to that rock. I'm not going to let that thing go. This is my rock. And they're yelling out there, drop the rock. Drop the rock. I'm hanging on to the life preserver, and the boat's going along, and I'm going under with the rock and hanging on. I got the thing, and they're going, hey, drop the rock out there. It was down under, and everybody's going, it's great up here. Come on up. I said, how do I get up there? They said, drop the rock. And I said, hey, I don't want to drop the rock. It's mine. And so finally one day, I don't know, something terrible happened. It took my attention away and I dropped it. And I was terrified. I said, there goes my rock. And while I was looking down there, I was like a water skier. I came up on the top of the water, I'm going on, and I'm going, what the hell would I want that rock for anyway? And that's it. Why we want to hold on to those old ideas with a death grip, I'll never know. It's one of the paradoxes in AA. And so if you're new, I hope this happens to you, and I want to be sitting out there next year, the year after that, whenever it takes place, because this is how I'll know about God even more. I want to be out there when you, some new person out there, is standing up here, and you got that sparkle in your eye, and you got that whole vitality going about Alcoholics Anonymous, and you're looking at some new guy and you're saying, drop the rock! It's the greatest! Thank you!
The 10th step, continue to take personal inventory, and when we're wrong, promptly admitted it, is if you're new, this is one of the steps where when you read it, you can't figure out what's really involved. And so then when you read the literature about it, you go, oh, I never would have, I picture, well, from now on, I just chug along. And if I make a mistake, then I acknowledge it and make amends. And that pretty well captures the whole thing. And that couldn't be further from the truth. There's so much more in this step than meets the eye. So I thought as a starting place, I would bring your attention to one sentence that's in the big book, about 4 sentences after the step starts, and see if this is what you thought of when you think of the 10th step. And the sentence is, we have entered the world of the Spirit. I doubt if that was your first thought when you read, continue to take personal inventory. So the entire discussion of the 10th step has to take place in the world of the Spirit. Otherwise, you miss the point of it. So when they say that 10, 11, and 12 are maintenance steps, they're talking about maintaining the transformation that took place as a result of the first 9 steps. So when it's, we have a daily reprieve contingent on our spiritual condition, they're talking about a transformed spiritual condition which allows us to see the world of the Spirit and to understand that there's a great difference between the operating rules of the material world and the operating principles of the spiritual world. And it's trying to get us to let go of all the guiding rules that we have inside of us that applied in the material world and completely trust the spiritual principles that operate in the spiritual world, which really consists of trusting ourselves less and God more, trusting our old ideas less and trusting God more. So the language that is used in the spiritual world is different. And this language is read to you all the time. It's read to you all the time. This language is read as much as any language in AA, and we never see what it really says. So I'm going to read you language from the world of the Spirit. And the main difference are the verbs. That's the main difference. And so, and this is the only reading I'm going to do. If I can see where I am. Don't get old. Okay, this is the type of things you hear in the world of the Spirit. We're going to know a new freedom and a new happiness. Now, we're going to know it. It's just like you come into the world of the Spirit and we go, Mary, I'd like to introduce you to new happiness. How do you do? It just becomes part of you. It doesn't say you're going to achieve it. It doesn't say someone's going to show you how to get it. It just says you're going to know this new happiness. This is not a normal process. Do you see what I'm saying? It doesn't say you get a promotion and then you feel happy. We comprehend the word serenity and we will know peace. Oh, so now suddenly we get introduced to peace. It doesn't say you achieve it. It just says you're suddenly going to know it. What a nice thing to happen. So in order to know it, you have to experience it, which means it just was given to you. You are at peace and you've never been at peace before. The feeling of uselessness and self-pity will disappear. That's a verb that a magician uses. Oh, you got a problem with the self-pity? Watch this. Did you ever think that when you read these sentences? It will disappear? We will lose interest in selfish things. Oh boy, I'm bored being selfish. Man, it doesn't even interest me anymore. Imagine this happening to you. I've been selfish all my life, and I'm just kind of bored being selfish, so I'm just not attracted to it anymore. Are you getting the idea that this is not the type of solution that you would get on a psychiatrist's couch as you're working on these problems? I doubt if he would look at you and say, "You're having a problem with self-pity? 3 visits, it'll disappear. 3 visits, self-pity is going to disappear. You can't even find it." The point is, in the world of the spirit, it doesn't exist. Self-seeking will slip away. Now it's not going to disappear, it's going to slip away. All this concern about yourself is going to slip away. It's like out the back jack. 50 ways to lose self-seeking. That's why I'm pointing out these verbs. And so next time this is read, you'll hear it. And you'll just go, yeah, that is an unusual choice of verbs to describe these things. Our whole attitude and outlook on life will change. Used to be this way, now it's changed. Are you seeing the components of a spiritual awakening? It's being laid out for us right here. Your whole outlook will change. Chuck Chamberlain would say, new pair of glasses. It used to suck. Try these. Looks great. The new pair of glasses. Your whole outlook will change. Fear of people and economic insecurity will leave us. I know I've been hanging around a long time bothering you about your fear of people. I'm busy. I'm going to have to leave you. I know you've been worried about it. I've been here pressing you for 20 years about being afraid of financial security. I have to go work on this guy, so I'm going to leave you now. They're going to leave us. This is why I'm pointing this out. And then, of course, we know this. We will intuitively know how to handle things that used to baffle us. So now we are speaking the language of the world of the spirit. We're going to intuitively exist. And there's a big difference. We're going to intuitively exist. When things come up, instead of trying to figure them out, instead of trying to worry about them, instead of trying to apply ourselves to it, we're going to let it go and wait until we're given intuitive guidance. That's the new operating rules in the world of the spirit. Or you can go back to the material world and live by those. And most of us, as we're getting started in this, we live in both places. And we spend the rest of our life, that's why those are the maintenance steps they call it, moving more and more and more into the world of the spirit, where meditation, prayer, and all these things that will be talked about by Bob would take place. You. And then comes the statement of the entry into the world of the spirit. We suddenly realize that God is doing all this. So at that moment in time, we personally have a sudden awareness of God. That is the big deal. That's the moment when you just go, oh my God, this is God that's doing all this. It was as if you were contacted. And then we want to maintain that contact. We want to maintain our conscious contact. Where did the contact come from? Here. We suddenly were contacted and we realized there is a personal God in my life. It doesn't happen to your group, it happens to you. And then it says, are these extravagant promises? Well, if you look at these promises, they're beyond extravagant. This is the jackpot of human existence. And when it says, are these extravagant, we go, we think not. And we go, really?
Why aren't they extravagant? Because God's doing it. This is a piece of cake for him. But for us to do it, it would be beyond extravagant. You're going to cause your fear of people and economic insecurity to disappear? I don't think so. So this is the language of the world of the Spirit that we're entering. And then comes the guarantee. They're being fulfilled among us, sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly. And then the final magician's word. They will always, out of nothing, materialize if we work for them. So out of nothing, this happens. It just appears. You have financial security without any money appearing. There's no reason for you to be comfortable around people, and you are. So then you realize something profound has happened, which brings us to step 10. So you might say this brings us to the doorway of the world of the Spirit. And we hear these stories every night at speaker meetings. My name is Mary, I'm an alcoholic, and I had a nice little house, and my parents were pretty nice, and then I decided that the reason I'm so unhappy was because they were so nice. How about that? You know, it's always got to be their fault. They were too poor, they were too rich. I was so rich I was alone all the time. Oh, wow, that's so bad. I feel so sorry for you. And so we start our story. And they're all the same except for the details. You know, one person's puking in a boat and another one's puking in an oxygen mask. And one person is robbing this and the next person is stealing that. But what is it? It's all leading to a bad ending. And along the way, we know it is. We could see it coming. And we know if I keep doing the same thing, I'm going to keep getting the same results. What do? You know, tonight it'll be different. I'll just have 2 beers, maybe a hamburger, play 1 game of pool, and go home to my family. All right, so what happens? So now when he gets bailed out of jail, then... And he has all the whole family's there, and they're lecturing and everything. He's going, I know. It's crazy. I promise that won't be happening anymore. And then he tells himself, I'm going to have just 1 beer and a ham sandwich. And then I'll come home to my family. And then he's back in jail. And no matter what we come up with, we go down and down and down. And eventually we see the 4 horsemen. And worse. And finally we get to what we call the bottom. And if we're lucky, there's a hand of somebody else who just was there. And they take it. And they start leading us out of the trap. And we come back, and it's a very long journey. But it gets happier and brighter and more useful and more rewarding. And finally, at the end of the line, we make it back to the kingdom. And they are so happy to see us. Hey! How was it? Oh, bad. I had no idea how wonderful this place was. Oh my God. I'm just taking it all. I can't believe that I left here. I know one thing. I'm 100 times happier than I was before. It's just amazing. That trip itself made this 20 times better. I can't look at it. I'm looking at the colors. I'm looking at indigo. I've never seen it that bright. Wow, this is amazing. And the guy said, yeah, well, we've noticed that everybody who goes down to earth, when they come back, they're 20 times happier than they were. Really? Yeah. That's why there's that 6-mile line over there trying to get back to earth. No kidding. Yeah. Yeah, it really does that. By the way, they changed from apple to banana, just so you know. How'd that happen? The Apple lobby. They came in and played all their cards. Said, why are we picked on for 1 billion years? How about somebody else? So they finally thought, well, isn't that the damnedest thing you ever think of? God, that's just amazing. And so he starts to settle in, and he starts to just appreciate the fact that from his old place where he loved to sit, he can see 5 galaxies. He can feel God's energy just surrounding him. And he's experiencing a peace that was beyond his wildest dreams. And he just sat there in awe and ecstasy that something this wonderful could happen to him. And he just sat contemplating it. He just sat breathing in and out. And he said to himself, I now know what they were talking about when they said, it can't get any better than this. This is it. And then he thinks, bananas? Why would they switch from apples to bananas? I don't like apples anymore if I can't eat them with my dentures. Bananas are perfect. Why would they pick that? Why would they do that to me? And then we learn out of all of this that that's not as good as it gets. It's about to get 20 times better. And we start another journey and another cycle. That's my story. I'm sticking to it. It captures the nature of life for me. And when we understand that it's going to be that way, I'm going to feel real healthy, now I'm sick. Now I'm happy, now I'm sad. Now everybody's behaving themselves, now they're going nuts. You follow what I'm saying? And then we just go, yes, that's what I'm part of. I am part of this particular universe. And so, I think I'm getting near the end. When we read the 12 and 12, which we study over here, on the last page, I think it's 125 in the 12 and 12, the last paragraph starts, and whenever I hear it, I have a little sadness. It says, these little studies of our 12 steps are now coming to a close. And I just can see Bill writing that. And I think it probably made him feel real good. These little studies, which is what the whole book was, just these little studies of our 12 steps are now coming to a close. And what do we do here when they come to a close? We start all over again with Rob. You follow what I'm saying? It comes to a close and it starts again. And then we have step 1. And then we have step 2. And we experience the wonderful spiritual journey of our 12 steps over and over and over again. And we experience it over and over again every time we sponsor somebody. And we watch Hopeless Wreck, Hopeful Halfway There, very useful AA member sponsoring 3 people, making the coffee, attending the intergroup functions. And we go, wow. And then knock, knock, hi, I'm brand new. Oh, you're a mess. I don't even think God can help you. And then he does, and I go, God, no way did I ever think he could have possibly made it. That's beyond my wildest dreams. I can't believe that guy. He's sitting over there. He's totally responsible. Absolutely incredible. And so our stories are coming to a close. And it's just been delightful. But I'm leaving a loose end that I haven't talked about. And this is just my take on it. We punctured the shell, and we could see the light, and we're entering something that we really don't understand, which is God and the universe. And so, how do we communicate and relate to this discovery? Now, we know that our thinking does nothing but screw things up. So thinking would be the worst possible way to do this. And so what's left? Well, I'll tell you something that I came across about a year ago in a history book. When Bill was getting near his old age, he'd been around a long, long time, probably 34 years or so. He wrote a letter to a friend, and he was reflecting in the letter on how he saw AA at that time. And this is what he called AA. He said that it was, wait a minute, I got to look it up, an utter simplicity which encases a complete mystery. In our 12 steps, there isn't anything more simple than those steps. It is a very simple program. And Dr. Bob said, keep it simple. And we take these very simple actions. The ego gets cracked, and we behold a complete mystery. And that is what we are now trying to relate to. And so when I was thinking about it, I thought about, what if I was a composer of music, maybe symphony music, and I wrote a symphony, and I wanted to know how you all felt about my symphony. Now, one way would be to wait for the end of the performance and see if everybody stood up and you got a standing ovation. But standing ovations are getting to be pretty perfunctory. At the end of everything, we stand up and applaud. We may not mean it, but we stand up and applaud. So that's not a very good. Something that might be better would be to be behind the curtain and have binoculars so that you could look at the faces while the music was being played. And I think you would get all the information you would need by just watching sadness, wonder, total rapture, totally lost in the music, totally consumed by the precise moment. Now that would be quite a message if you were the composer. Wouldn't that make the composer really happier than anything you could ever say? Could you top that with any kind of words? You couldn't. So maybe, as we step into this, we have to fully accept it's a complete mystery. And we have to become mystery beholders instead of mystery sleuths. There's nothing to figure out. It is beyond figuring out. You simply don't know. And so we get happy with not knowing. There's nothing to know. There's just a show to behold. That's what's there. And I think we mentioned it earlier that the first question we're going to get when we get over back into the magic place, wherever it is, did you enjoy the show? I absolutely told you to insist on enjoying life, to display enjoyment. And so if I want a wonderful life and a wonderful universe and a wonderful God, maybe I should just look at the definition of that word, full of wonder. Full of wonder. It's that simple. There's nothing left to do but that. Isn't that amazing? Now, there was a great hero of mine who passed away, I don't know, about 20 years ago. Everybody knows him. He's our dear brother, Louis Armstrong. And when I think of Louis Armstrong, this is what I think of, are these words. I see trees of green, red roses too. I see them bloom from me and you. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. I see skies of blue, clouds of white, bright blessed days, dark sacred nights. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. The colors of the rainbow, so pretty in the sky, are also on the faces of people passing by. I see friends shaking hands, saying, how do you do? They're really saying, I love you. I hear babies crying. I watch them grow. They'll learn much more than I'll ever know. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. Yeah. I think to myself, what a wonderful world. Thank you all and good night. You get that?